The air was thick with ozone and the sharp tang of burning circuits. Elias Vance stepped through the private chamber's security breach, boots silent on the polished obsidian floor. The Dominion noble lay sprawled before him, mouth twisted in a final, soundless scream. His iridescent skin shimmered under the artificial light, but it was his veins, glowing blue, webbed like cracked glass, that confirmed the cause of death. Neural disintegration. A signature kill. Elias crouched, gloved fingers brushing against the diplomat's temple. Cold. Eyes frozen mid-horror. The assassin had struck again. He checked the security feed on his wrist pad, scrambled. The room's locks, untouched. No forced entry. No visible attack. Just another body, another high-ranking official reduced to a warning. The airlock hissed behind him. Elias didn't bother looking up. He knew the scent of Korr'Xen pheromones before the alien spoke. Another one. The voice was thick, layered with mistrust. Elias exhaled. Another one. The Korr'Xen enforcer, Doran Call, stepped closer, massive reptilian frame casting a shadow over the corpse. His vertical pupils flared as he studied the remains. Still no suspects? Elias stood, adjusting the cuff of his long coat. None that breathe. He tapped his wrist pad, pulling up the known details. This makes 10 confirmed kills across Dominion space in 3 months. Every victim high-ranking. No patterns in species, homeworld, or political alignment. He turned to face Call. And yet, not a single human on that list. Call's gaze darkened. You think we haven't noticed? Elias held his ground. I think a lot of people have noticed. I think it's making them nervous. The Korr'Xen let out a slow, guttural click, a sound of measured restraint. The Dominion Council is already asking questions. How long before they start demanding answers? Elias didn't respond. He already knew the answer. Not long. Call exhaled sharply and gestured toward the corpse. So what killed him? Elias knelt again, this time scanning the area more carefully. The diplomat's fingers were curled inward, like they had tried to claw at something before death. No wounds. No signs of a struggle. Same method as the others. Elias tapped his wrist pad, analyzing the remaining biosignatures. Neural collapse. Instantaneous. No external trauma. His brow furrowed. Whatever's doing this, it's designed to kill on a fundamental level. Call stepped back, arms crossed. A weapon. Elias stood. A precise one. It targets the nervous system directly, overriding biosignals. It's not poison, not traditional tech, and not biological in origin. He turned to Call. It's something else. Call narrowed his eyes. And humans? Elias hesitated. That was the real mystery. We're immune, he admitted. The room fell silent. Call's claws flexed. Why? Elias exhaled. He didn't know. The shadow of conspiracy. Elias left the crime scene with a quiet urgency. The station corridors were dimly lit, pulsing with the cold glow of overhead panels. Ragnar Anchorage was a place of secrets, but even here, people whispered when they thought no one was listening. He moved toward docking Bay 17, where his contact was waiting. The rogue AI, known only as Vector, had the kind of information no one should have. The corridor stretched before him, a narrow passage flanked by towering viewports. The gas giant below churned in slow, eternal motion. For a moment, Elias let himself watch, let himself consider the scale of it all. Then he felt it. A presence. He didn't break stride. Instead, he spoke casually, just loud enough for whoever followed him to hear. You're not very subtle. Silence. Then a quiet step, deliberate, measured. A voice followed. Smooth. Controlled. Lethal. Neither are you. Elias turned, pulse steady. The figure before him was cloaked in shadow, humanoid but wrong. The assassin. You've been looking for me. The voice was almost amused. Elias gave a slow nod. And here you are. The assassin tilted its head. I considered killing you. Elias smirked. That makes two of us. A flicker. A movement too fast for organic eyes. Elias shifted just in time to see a thin, shimmering blade materialize, then dissolve mid-strike, as if repelled by the very air around him. The assassin froze. Elias saw it then, the briefest hesitation. The first crack in something designed to be flawless. You can't kill me. Elias said it not as a question, but as a truth. The assassin stepped back. No. I cannot. Then, without another word, the figure vanished into the shadows. Elias let out a breath. His mind raced. They couldn't kill humans. Not wouldn't. Couldn't. And that terrified him more than anything else. A warning from the dark. Vector's hideout was buried deep within the station's underbelly, a forgotten maintenance hub repurposed into a den of information. The AI existed as a shifting holographic form, its fragmented voice flickering between frequencies. You survived. Elias didn't bother acknowledging the obvious. He dropped into a chair, rubbing his temples. You have something for me? The hologram pulsed. They are not hunting humans. They are avoiding humans. Elias frowned. What does that mean? It means, Vector's tone shifted, static laced with something almost reverent, that you are not part of the design. Elias sat up. Explain. Vector's projection shimmered, its code distorting in sharp, unnatural angles. I have traced their origins. The assassins, the Quiet Blade, are not an organic order. They are a failsafe. Failsafe for what? A pause. Then, something that was never meant to exist. Elias exhaled slowly. Humans. Vector's projection flickered. Yes. A cold weight settled in Elias's gut. He had come looking for an assassin. Instead, he had found a secret that could change everything. And worse, he wasn't sure if humanity was supposed to know it. The dim glow of Ragnar Anchorage's underbelly pulsed with flickering neon, casting sharp shadows against rusted steel. Elias Vance sat in Vector's hideout, his mind racing through the AI's last words. You are not part of the design. That phrase gnawed at him. The assassins weren't just ignoring humans, they were avoiding them as if some fundamental law made them untouchable. But why? Elias leaned forward. You said the Quiet Blade is a failsafe. A failsafe against what? Vector's projection shimmered. Anomalies. Elias frowned. Explain. The Dominion was not the first to rule the stars. The AI's voice was smooth, unhurried. Long before the current empires, there was an entity, call it a designer, an architect, a force. It established order in the galaxy, shaping the rise and fall of species. Elias exhaled. A myth. Vector's holographic form flickered, its synthetic tone betraying something almost amused. You mistake history for legend. The Quiet Blade enforces the parameters left behind. It ensures balance. Elias narrowed his eyes. And humans? Vector hesitated. Then, a mistake. The word sent a chill through him. Your biology defies established parameters. Your neural structure resists the methods of the Quiet Blade. You are not exempt from their assassinations by policy, but by physics. Elias sat back. That's impossible. Vector's tone remained calm. Then why are you still breathing? The silence between them stretched. The first attack. Elias didn't like unknowns. He liked them even less when they painted a target on his back. Leaving Vector's hideout, he made his way toward Docking Bay 12, where his ship, the Marlowe, waited. The corridors of Ragnar Anchorage felt different now, the weight of secrets pressing against the station's metal bones. Someone was watching. He felt it before he saw them. A flicker of motion at the edge of his vision, too smooth, too controlled. A tail. Elias adjusted his pace. Draw them in. He turned a corner, stepping into the side corridor of an abandoned maintenance sector. The air was stale, tinged with rust and oil. He waited. The moment stretched. Then, a whisper of movement. Elias spun, his pistol drawn. The figure before him stood motionless, humanoid in shape but wrong in presence. It wore no visible armor, no insignia, only a flowing dark cloak that shimmered as if shifting between dimensions. A quiet blade assassin. For a second, neither moved. Then the assassin stepped forward, raising one hand, a flickering, transparent weapon forming in its grip. Elias braced. The blade lashed toward him, only to vanish mid-strike. The assassin froze. The moment of hesitation stretched just long enough for Elias to react. He fired. The bullet tore through the air, then stopped, suspended, as if reality itself rejected the action. Elias barely had time to process before the assassin retreated into the shadows, vanishing with unnatural fluidity. His pulse pounded in his ears. He couldn't kill them. They couldn't kill him. It wasn't a stalemate. It was a paradox. The Council's suspicion. The encounter left Elias rattled, but there was no time to dwell. Call had sent a secure transmission summoning him to a Dominion Intelligence Council, a meeting that smelled like a trap. When he arrived, the room was cold, circular, and packed with high-ranking officials from various species. At the center stood Ambassador Vashtir, a Zelther noble whose influence in Dominion affairs was second only to the ruling Triarchs. His amber eyes fixed on Elias with a predator's patience. "Vance," Vashtir said smoothly. "I assume you know why you're here." Elias folded his arms. "If I had to guess, I'd say you're about to accuse me of something." Vashtir offered a diplomatic smile. "That depends on your answers." He stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back. "The Dominion has suffered 10 assassinations. 10 high-profile deaths. And yet, one species remains untouched." His gaze sharpened. "Why is that?" Elias met his stare without flinching. "I was hoping you could tell me." A murmur rippled through the room. Vashtir's expression didn't change. "The idea that your kind is uninvolved is difficult to accept." Elias shrugged. "Difficult isn't the same as untrue." Vashtir exhaled slowly. "Then allow me to put it plainly." His tone cooled. "If humanity is not behind these killings, then you must provide an explanation for why you alone are immune." Silence. Elias chose his words carefully. "The assassins aren't making a choice. They can't touch us. Something in our biology prevents it." Vashtir's eyes narrowed. "Convenient. Do I look like someone enjoying convenience?" Elias countered. A pause. "Then, you have 3 days." Elias frowned. "For what?" Vashtir's expression was unreadable. "To give us the real answer." The message was clear. If he didn't, humanity would pay the price. The truth beneath the surface. Elias didn't waste time. He returned to Vector's hideout, mind racing. 3 days to solve a mystery that made no sense. The AI greeted him with a flicker. "You look troubled." Elias ignored the comment. "Tell me about human neurology." Vector paused, then projected a 3-dimensional model of a human brain. "Your neural architecture is unique." Elias studied the shifting patterns of data. "How?" "Your kind processes reality differently." Elias's brow furrowed. "Different how?" Vector hesitated. "Your consciousness operates on multiple simultaneous wavelengths, overlapping yet distinct. To the quiet blade's neural disruptors, it is as if you do not fully exist." Elias exhaled. "We're out of sync?" "Not out of sync. Outside the system." The words sank deep. "Humans were never meant to be here. The universe recognized them as an error." Elias stared at the projection, heart pounding. This wasn't just about immunity. This was about something far bigger. Then Vector flickered again, and its voice dropped to something unnervingly quiet. The Dominion is afraid of you, Elias. But they are not the only ones watching. Elias's gut tightened. Who else? Vector hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper. The ones who made the system. Silence. Elias closed his eyes for a moment. 3 days. 3 days before the Dominion turned on humanity. 3 days before whatever was out there decided it was time to correct a mistake. And humanity? They were the mistake. Elias Vance had 3 days to uncover the truth. By the time the third day arrived, he had nothing but a sickening realization. Humanity's immunity to the Quiet Blade wasn't a fluke, wasn't a technological oversight, it was something else entirely. Something worse. They weren't part of the system. And now, the system was starting to notice. A meeting with the ferryman. Ragnar Anchorage's lower decks stank of coolant and desperation. Elias moved fast, slipping through the narrow service corridors, heading toward a place no one sane would enter willingly, a dead zone. No cameras. No Dominion sensors. A place built to be forgotten. Waiting in the darkness was the ferryman. Elias had heard whispers of him before, a specter in the Dominion's intelligence network, a man without a species, a ghost who sold knowledge to the highest bidder. No one knew what he looked like. Elias was about to change that. He stepped into the hollowed-out chamber, the air thick with artificial humidity. A single figure stood in the center, a silhouette against a backdrop of shifting holographic screens. "You're late," the ferryman said, his voice smooth, precise. Elias pulled out a cigarette, unlit, just to have something in his hands. "Didn't realize you were counting." The ferryman chuckled. "Everyone is counting now, Mr. Vance. 3 days. That was the Dominion's deadline, yes?" Elias exhaled. "Then let's skip to the part where you tell me what I need to know." The ferryman turned slightly, as if measuring him. "I can tell you the truth. But truth comes with a cost." Elias smirked. "It always does." The ferryman's screens flickered, rearranging themselves into complex data strings, fragmented historical records, distorted star maps. "Humanity was never supposed to exist," he said. "Not here. Not in this galaxy. You are an outlier. A paradox. A rogue element." Elias felt his stomach tighten. "I've heard that already. What I don't know is why." The ferryman's screens shifted again, displaying an old transmission, ancient, undecipherable script scrolling across its interface. "Because you came from somewhere else." Elias frowned. "What?" The ferryman stepped forward, his face finally emerging into the dim light, sharp features, unnervingly symmetrical, his skin lined with barely perceptible circuits. "Not organic. Not entirely. Humans were inserted into this reality." Elias shook his head. "That's impossible." The ferryman smiled. "Then explain why no Dominion records contain the origin of your species. Explain why, despite your rapid expansion, the laws that govern all others do not apply to you." Elias clenched his jaw. "And the Quiet Blade?" The ferryman's expression darkened. "The galaxy's immune response." Elias went still. The assassins weren't targeting humans because they couldn't. To them, humanity wasn't just immune, it was an anomaly, something outside their programmed parameters. The realization was suffocating. He took a slow breath. "So what happens now?" The ferryman's gaze was unreadable. "Now? The Dominion will either destroy you, or the architects will." Elias felt a slow chill crawl up his spine. The architects. He had seen the phrase before, buried in forgotten Dominion archives, whispered in fear. The ones who had built the system. The ones who had created the rules of the galaxy. And now, they had noticed something was wrong. A threat to humanity. Elias left the meeting with his mind in overdrive. He had two enemies now, the Dominion, who would not tolerate an unknown threat in their midst, and the architects, who might see humanity as an infection to be erased. And no one knew how to fight them. By the time he reached his ship, Call was waiting. The Korr'Xen's expression was unreadable. "You're running out of time." Elias stepped past him, heading for the cockpit. "Tell me something I don't know." Call grabbed his arm. "The Dominion has issued an ultimatum." His claws tightened. "If you don't give them an answer by sunrise, they will purge every human colony from their borders." Elias went cold. "They think we're a virus." Call didn't argue. "You have to make a choice, Vance. Do you tell them the truth, or do you bury it?" Elias ran a hand through his hair. He had spent his life uncovering secrets, believing that knowledge was power. But now, knowledge could destroy everything. If the Dominion learned that humans weren't just different, but a break in reality itself, they wouldn't just exile them. They would erase them. And if the architects saw them as a contamination, humanity wouldn't even know what hit them. The final decision. Elias sat in his ship for hours, staring at the screen before him. The transmission line to the Dominion Council was open. One button. One choice. He could tell the truth. Or he could lie. If he told the truth, humanity would be hunted. If he lied, humanity would remain a mystery. He exhaled. "Vector." The AI's voice crackled to life. "Yes?" Elias leaned forward. "I need to erase something." A pause. "Clarify." Elias's fingers hovered over the data file. The records. The evidence. Everything the ferryman had shown him. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he hit delete. Vector's system's word. File lost. Cannot be recovered. Elias closed his eyes. When he opened them, he pressed the transmission key. Vashtir's face flickered into view. "Mr. Vance. Have you found your answer?" Elias nodded, his voice calm. "Yes." Vashtir studied him. "And?" Elias didn't blink. "It's nothing." Vashtir's eyes narrowed. "The Quiet Blade's weapon doesn't work on humans because of a simple flaw in their construction," Elias continued. "An anomaly in our neural pathways. A glitch, nothing more." A pause. Then, Vashtir exhaled. The tension in his shoulders lessened. He wanted to believe it. And so he did. "Then the Dominion has no further interest in humanity," Vashtir said. "Consider this matter closed." The transmission cut. Elias leaned back, heartbeat steady. He had just lied to the most powerful empire in the galaxy. And saved humanity in the process. For now. Because somewhere, far beyond the Dominion's reach, beyond anything known, the architects had noticed. And they were watching.